We are thrilled to introduce GKE Enterprise, which was announced at Google Cloud Next conference in August, and is now generally available. Hi, my name is Lisa Shen, and I am a product manager for Google Cloud's container runtimes. I am joined by Mac McDaniel, the chief architect in 66 Degrees. Mac, you want to say hi?
Are you ready?
Yeah. So, this is today's agenda, and I'll tell you why we are introducing GKE Enterprise Edition and what that GKE Enterprise Edition is about. And then I'm going to hand over to Mac, who will get us into all the details of the features with some nice demos as well. And then feel free to ask questions, and then you can click the activity button in the Google Meet on your on your right bottom side of the Google Meet, and then we'll also be able to answer those questions live at the end. So without further ado, let's get started. All right. So we have two editions now with GKE as part of the GKE Enterprise Edition launch. All the existing GKE features prior to the GKE Enterprise GA, they are now available in the GKE Standard Edition on the left side of the slides, as you can see. In the GKE Standard Edition, you can have two different ways to manage Kubernetes clusters. For example, you can use you have the GKE Standard mode, and you have the GKE Autopilot mode, right? So GKE Enterprise works with both those modes of operations. On the right side is the GKE Enterprise Edition. It is a premium edition, right? As a premium edition, it includes all the features in the GKE Standard Edition, plus a number of features such as fleet-enabled multi-team, multi-cluster management, advanced vulnerability insights for your workload, a GitOps-based config management, so on and so forth. And we'll get into those features by Mac in a second. So GKE Enterprise is designed to help you scale clusters easily and securely to run the business critical workloads. If you are an existing GKE customer, you'll be able to enable the GKE Enterprise API and then start to use all those new features on your existing GKE clusters, whether they are the clusters in the standard mode or in the autopilot mode. We also have 90-day free trial offer for everyone, and all you need to do is to go to the Google Cloud Console and then Kubernetes Engine dashboard to activate the trial. So it's pretty easy to do, and Mac probably can also show you when he gets to his demo as well. So why are we doing the GKE Enterprise? Our customers and in the broader market are noting a significant trend in the last few years. The enterprise buyers, they want more than just a managed Kubernetes service for scheduling and orchestrating their container workloads. They want enterprise-ready, comprehensive container management platform, including policy, governance, security, monitoring, observability, service mesh, ingress controls, and a unified set of management APIs and a differentiated console experience. And then customers want to take advantage of the rich and vibrant Kubernetes ecosystems. So they don't want to really manage those add-ons with added operational cost. So this is why actually we introduced the GKE Enterprise. GKE Enterprise Edition targets most important enterprise use cases. I have some use cases listed here as well. So for example, it helps you to enable multi-teams, to innovate faster with dedicated environments. You can use the GKE Enterprise to simplify and automate multi-cluster management with the fleet concept, and it helps you to scale up easily. You'll also be able to reduce the operation cost with automated GitOps config management tool. And then you'll be able to run the business critical applications and the latest AI machine learning workload safely at scale. So now let me turn the mic to Mac, and we'll talk about all the details about the GKE Enterprise features and then give you the nice demos as well. Mac.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you. As Lisa mentioned, this was announced at Google Next, and we were one of the launch partners for GKE Enterprise Edition at Google Next, and it's now become GA as of last month. As well as being a chief architect here at 66 Degrees, I'm also a Google Cloud Fellow. So I'm very happy to talk to you today about GKE Enterprise. So those of you who are familiar with GKE will see a lot of commonality here. You can think of GKE Enterprise as GKE Standard plus a whole lot more. And one of the core ideas here is that it's bundling all this enterprise functionality into a single product, basically a single SKU that makes it easier to consume and utilize and take advantage of all these enterprise features. So you'll see GKE Standard Edition here on the bottom left. In addition to both standard mode, where you're having provisioned nodes inside your cluster, as GKE started, GKE then expanded to have autopilot mode, where the nodes are managed by Google and you're really just paying for pod consumption. That same model is in GKE Enterprise Edition as well. So you can run Enterprise Edition either on GKE Standard mode or on autopilot mode. You can see here that you've got all the same governance, security, operations, and service networking that you've seen in various products in Google Cloud, and they're now all brought together in one. Some of the newer features are fleet management and team management, and we'll go into those. And then obviously you've got the Kubernetes control plane and platform API. The other things that are included in Enterprise Edition are running multi-cloud, so in AWS and Azure, and hybrid cloud, which is on-premise, either on bare metal or running on top of VMware. So we'll dive right in here. And fleet management is the ability to manage many clusters efficiently. You can apply certain aspects of configuration and management to a fleet of clusters. So if you're running a highly distributed e-commerce platform, for example, you can have multiple clusters on, say you'll have one in the United States, one in Europe, one in Asia, and they can all be part of a single fleet, enabling you to manage and monitor and have observability across your fleet as a single unit, even though they may be running different workloads. And we'll see this in action in the demo a little bit. Team management is a new feature that allows you to assign teams, and those are generally done by Google Groups. And then you can assign the team a namespace, one or more namespaces across clusters of the fleet. So basically, once you say that I want team one to have a presence, have 3 namespaces across 2 of these clusters, cluster 1 and 2, that's just managed, and those namespaces are created there for you automatically. And you can see on the right-hand side, Team Scope 2 may have 2 namespaces on cluster 2 and cluster 3. And then Team 3, or Team Admin will have namespace 6 across all across all 3 clusters. So there's no limit to how you connect these and utilize them to make team management more effective and efficient. The feature manager gives you basically a fleet-wide view and ability to turn on and turn off and access different features. We'll go into the service mesh, config sync, security posture, and the policy management in detail. So on service mesh, GKE service mesh you can think of as a beefed up and managed Istio implementation. So it is using the sidecar pattern, but the control plane is managed by Google when you're running GKE in the cloud. So you don't have to allocate additional resources to run the control plane of your service mesh. The only thing that's running in your space is the proxy, the Envoy sidecar proxy. It separates applications from app networking, decouples operations from development, provides a consistent network, and it gives you security and control over which pods can talk to others. So in an e-commerce environment, You want your cart service to be able to talk to your credit card service, for example, but you may not want the ad service to talk to your credit card service. So therefore, you would disable that communication path. And if for some reason the ad service was compromised by an attacker, they would not have the ability to interact with your credit card service. Security posture gives you a kind of a dashboard, a centralized place to see all the aspects of security within your fleet of clusters. No matter how many clusters you have, you can see here in this screen, there's 100 concerns, over 10 GKE clusters running 60 different workloads. And it's very simple to take a quick look at this and see what the status from a security posture perspective your cluster is. You don't have to integrate third-party tooling. You've got a purpose-built dashboard, and it's very risk or concern oriented. So you can see on the left side under severity there, we've got 100 concerns, and you can see they're broken out by severity as well. And we'll see this in action during the demo. Config management. This was known as Anthos Config Management. This is a way to apply a GitOps style operation to your cluster configuration. So you're able to deploy things like policies, like namespaces, like daemon sets, storage providers that are really across a cluster or apply to a specific namespace that aren't related directly to an application. In a Git repo, a GitOps styled promotion methodology that allows you to select the clusters that these various configurations apply to. And we'll show this in action as well. Policy management allows you to apply multiple different types of policies into your Kubernetes cluster. These policies can be industry best practices, industry standards, or vulnerabilities. And we'll see how the console is broken up that way. Basically, it regulates the use of services in the cloud. It helps you achieve compliance with various standards like PCI DSS and NIST 800-53. And it drives an ability to be able to quantify and take snapshots of configuration over time and roll them back when you've decided a configuration change isn't working the way you wanted it to. And this works across hybrid and multi-cloud clusters as well. The overall observability, this is the new kind of landing page for Kubernetes within Google Cloud. And it gives you a very high level kind of snapshot view of your entire fleet. So you can see from features, you can see that the security is bringing up these 122 concerns. You've got your policy controller and your config delivery. And then you start to get into fleet efficiency, and then it breaks down by team and namespace even more. So you can see where your resources are being used, where you might be over provisioned, where you might be under provisioned. And this is very much the demo architecture we're going to show. We've got 3 different clusters in 3 regions. They're all members of our single fleet. And we're running all the different features: team management, fleets, config, service mesh, policy, and we'll dive into each one of these. So now I'm going to switch over to our console. All right. So we'll start off with the overall visibility. Here you can see our 3 clusters. They're all healthy, so no further action is needed. We've got our team scopes, and we basically have the Bank of Anthos and our computer vision applications running in, the online boutique running in 2 different teams. And you can see our overall utilization, our CPU, disk, and memory is very moderate right now. Obviously, you will base your cluster sizing and auto scaling based on what you know about your application's usage. And then we go into feature management. So here we can see we've got 107 concerns, and you can see we've got no critical, which is always good. and 31 high and 76 medium. And we'll dive into each one of these. And as you see here, you can go into each one of these from here directly, but we'll take a more progressive view here. So we see we've got our two clusters with policy, and one is not running policy. And then our config status, we've got two different packages, all are in good states. And now you can see our CPU utilization by our fleet. So we'll have two things by fleets here, our CPU, memory, and disk utilization. And you can see we're looking pretty good. We're running just under, we're running 23.52 CPUs and 83 gig of memory and 262 gig of storage. Then you can see, to kind of look at it from a different perspective, spin the Rubik's Cube around one notch, and we've got CPU utilization by cluster. So you can see how our clusters are doing, memory utilization, disk utilization, and then the low side of that. So here's what we're using, and here's the ones that are, if you have 10 or 20 or 50 clusters, here's the ones that might be over provisioned because we're only running 8% average on this. Of course, this is a POC, this is a demo, so we don't have a whole lot going on here. And you see the same low memory and low disk utilization. Then we switch the Rubik's Cube again over to teams, and you can see what each team CPU, memory, and utilization is doing. And then you can see some stuff by scope, which is also basically a team. And you can see here our error counts and our restarts. We've only had one restart, so we're looking pretty good. So that's fleets. And the way you see that here is on the Kubernetes engine, when you have GKE Enterprise Edition enabled, you'll see this enterprise, and you'll see the fleet. We've only got, I guess we do have other fleets, but we've got just this one we're looking at. And then you have the additional fleet. And anytime you see the E next to an item here, that's the Enterprise Edition. So we'll go over to teams now, and you can see our two different teams. So we've got our Bank of Anthos and our Online Boutique. You can see errors, restarts, utilization, memory, and disk. And you can go into each one as well. So our Bank of Anthos, you can see who's in the team. So we've got our admin group as our administrator, and our GKE POC Bank of Anthos group as editor. So this makes it very easy using Google Groups to just add and remove people to the groups as they participate or stop participating in various teams. Then you can go down here and look at the utilization again by team scope. And then you've got the top namespaces, or top CPU by namespace, memory, and disk. And again, our errors. You can see which clusters the Bank of Anthos, the BOA team is deployed onto. And you can see we've got one in East 1 and one in West 1. So again, this is 2 out of the 3 of the clusters we have. And you can see that our BOA team only has one namespace. You actually can create multiple namespaces. So if you're breaking your application down by namespaces, you might have in a single application might have multiple namespaces where you have your persistence, like your Redis or whatever, in a certain namespace, and you have your maybe your credit card processing is in a separate namespace to keep it really isolated, and your online shopping is in a third namespace. So you could have all those be part of the team scope. So it doesn't limit you by namespace. And we're going to go down to the feature manager down here. And this is an Enterprise Edition feature. And this is basically very similar to the slide where we just showed the different features that are enabled across the cluster. And you can see that policy is enabled on 2 out of the 3. Maybe the policy is not applicable for compute in a certain country or a certain region, or you would maybe apply different policy. Our config is synced, and our security posture is looking good. Now we're going to go down to service mesh. And immediately you can see here, and this is a little touchy. I'll try to make this fit better. Yep. There we go. So you can see this is the Online Boutique application. You can filter by cluster, by location, by namespace, whatever you need to. You see on the left here, we've got our various services running. And again, we have our front end. And I didn't even click this. When you just roll over it, you can see everything that the front end is calling. You can also go over here and click on it, and you'll see requests per second. You're able to break it out into more pieces. You can dive into the service and the deployment and the pods behind all these things as well. And then you can see our email service. Our currency service is a big one. So we're getting 23 requests per second with 0% error rate and a 2 millisecond latency. So it gets you all the critical information right here, right on the main screen, without having to dive into anything. And then you can, for example, go into what service? The checkout service. So here you can see the front end is the only pod or workload that's calling the checkout service, but it calls the shipping service, email service, and cart service. And this is kind of what I was talking about. This is all they're allowed to call, and it tells you the query rate or the request per second rate here, and you can change that to error rate or the latency as well. And it gives you your request per second, your 95, 99, and 50% latencies, CPU utilization, memory, error rates, etc. It also, one of the big advantages of the service mesh is allows you to create SLOs. So SLOs are being service level objectives. This gives you the ability to say, here are the parameters in which I want my service to run. So in today's world, unlike the past where you would maybe want to alert on every single error that occurs, retry logic is built into many of the services today. So having a kind of a binary, I got an error, I need to page somebody, and it's you're raising the red flag, you may want to have policies that are a little more flexible and dynamic that say, well, if my error rate goes above 1 a minute or 1 every 30 seconds, then I really want to start raising the red flag and getting people to look at this. But having 1 in an hour or 1 in a day isn't a big deal. So there's that's how you would do this as an SLO. And then on your top of your SLO, you're able to create an SLA, an alert that then calls pager duties, texts people, sends emails, etc. Now moving on to our enhanced security posture. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. I had to go back of that. Now we'll go to security posture. So here, just like in the slide deck, you can see very quickly that we have 0 critical concerns, which is good, and 31 high. The different types of concerns are broken out, and it looks like we have 76 configuration alerts and 31 security bulletins and 0 vulnerabilities, which is a good place to be. All 3 GKE clusters are affected, and they're impacting 51 out of 38 out of 51 workloads. So here's our workload configuration and our top 3 concerns, and then our OS vulnerability, our relevant security bulletins, our advanced security, our policy compliance is right in here. We'll get into policy in a little bit. And then you've actually got some learning resources here as well. So we can go into our concerns, and we'll see a list of our concerns. We can view them by concern, by namespace, workload. So we could switch this around and we can break it out by namespace. You can also filter by your severity, type, location, or cluster. So we can look at, for example, this one here, and it will give you a detailed description that this container has been explicitly configured to allow privilege escalation. Obviously, and this is something, unless this is something that is technically required and everybody is aware of that requirement, you don't want to have enabled. So here it's telling you exactly what how you would fix this thing, your recommended action, and a link to understand more information about this. So it gives you a very robust set of information that you can take action based off of, all right in the console. You never have to leave and go to other tools and do your own searching for information. All right, moving on to config management. We've got our config management screen here. So again, we've got our reconciliation. So we've got two packages, and those are two Git repos, basically. The two are current, and then our synchronization. So synchronization is where the cluster has downloaded the information from the Git repo, and the config sync status is not showing. So I'm going to see if I refresh this. Okay, there we go. So the config sync status is that, also known as the reconciliation status, means that the cluster has applied those changes. Another aspect of config sync is that because it's GitOps driven, as soon as there's a push to a branch that applies to the clusters, and basically you set this up in the settings, you say, what branch do we want to pay attention to? It's going to get a message, and within a few seconds start applying that change. The other interesting thing about config sync is that it will also prevent unauthorized changes to your cluster's configuration. So for example, if part of your config is setting up a config map, and you have a person that goes in and either accidentally or maliciously wants to delete that config map, because it's a managed attribute of your deployment, of your cluster, config sync will interrupt that operation and not allow it to continue. So this gives you the ability to make sure that clusters don't drift out of compliance or out of sync with your configuration. Obviously, you don't have to control every attribute of your cluster by config sync. It's not the right tool for doing application deployments, for example. So there are things you won't do with it, but the things that you want to do with it are things that don't change super often, although the changes are done very quickly, and that can apply across many clusters. If you had 50 clusters, who wants to go deploy a config map to 50 clusters? You can set it up in the config sync repo, define it in there. Once you approve and push that change into the appropriate branch, it will be picked up by all the clusters, and within a minute will be applied across your entire fleet of 50 clusters. So it has a lot of power there. Then we can look at the packages we've installed with config sync. Like I said, we have two different repos. Our sample repository, and you can see all the different pieces, all the things we've defined. We've got a Prometheus operator. We've got the Anthos config management, Prometheus alert configs, web store, the game store. So these are all different things that are defined in YAML in your Git repo that are applied. And then our other repo down here has just two things: your store inventory and your game place namespace or web store. All right, going on to policy management. All right, so policy management, this is a newer feature within GCP overall. It's been around for maybe a year, I think. I could be wrong on that. But basically, this allows you to take a bunch of different policies, and these are OPA compliant. So you've got your compliance with Kubernetes standards. So we've implemented the CIS Kubernetes benchmark version 151. And you can see here very quickly that 17% of our of the tests pass, 16 fail, and 67 weren't applicable. And then on your industry standards, like I mentioned, we've got the NIST 853, NIST 800-190, and our PCI DSS. And then best practices, you can actually implement your own best practices. So you have enterprise, your enterprise has best practices, and we've just implemented the policy essentials. So, which is a policy that comes from Google Cloud, and it gives you best practices for managing namespaces and tagging and things like that. And we'll get into each one of these. So here we can click on the violations. And again, we have everything by the constraint itself, by the policy, by namespace, or we can divide it out by resource kind. And then on the left, you can filter out which ones you're interested in looking at. So here you can see we've got 126 violations on pods and 42 on namespaces. We've got 199 in this cluster and 37 in this cluster. And then basically based on the policy itself. So we've got a user-defined policy, and we've got a namespace must-have environment. We can look at that. And basically what this is saying here in the YAML is that every namespace must have a prod or dev environment label on it. We can look at the PCI DSS. And we look, here's a constraint called, or a policy called apps must have certain set of annotations, gives you the description, the recommended action, and the constraint YAML itself. So you can look at a very detailed level what's going on. And here we can see that there is the ability to exclude namespaces from policies. So not every policy will apply to every namespace. You might have a namespace that is a daemon set, for example, and of course, some daemons are going to run at root level, so you don't want a policy applied to that says you can't run pods as root. So that's a way to make sure you're not creating alert fatigue for your operators, that you don't have a dashboard that's so overwhelming it's useless. You get a lot of this control. And then our policy essentials will give us things like restrict cluster admin role bindings. So this is saying that you want to restrict the use of the cluster admin role, and you cannot use this role in role-based access controls. And again, here's the YAML defining that policy. All right, that is what I had for the demo for now. So I'm wondering if we have any questions at this point.
Let's actually take a look at, thanks, Mac. By the way, it's a very nice demo. Let's take a look at the Q&A.
I don't see any yet.
Yeah. So, so I've got one like from, oh, there's one.
Yes. So the question is, I'm using GKE Autopilot today. Can I use Autopilot with GKE Enterprise Edition? The answer is yes. So there's a difference between modes and editions. And unfortunately, just the way it worked out, you have standard in both those. So standard mode was the original mode for GKE, where you have node pools. So you can define multiple node pools, they scale independently, and you have that level of control, but you're paying for the node when it's active, whether you're really using it 10% or 90%, you're paying for the full node. Autopilot was something that came out 1.5 years or 2 years ago that enabled you to pay for just the workloads you're running. So literally just the pods that are running are what get charged for. So those are both still valid in GKE Standard Edition, which is what GKE had been until November. Now you layer Enterprise Edition with all these features on top of it, and you can still run Enterprise Edition in standard mode and in autopilot mode.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add that. I think I also heard some confusions around, hey, I have an autopilot mode cluster. Can I just apply the GKE Enterprise feature? Yes, you can enable the GKE Enterprise API and all the features that the Mac has just demoed. will be able to apply to the autopilot cluster as well. So
yeah,
yeah,
that is, Google seems to be going toward this standard edition, enterprise edition naming scheme for several products. So they wanted to be consistent across their suite of offerings. So it made sense to have standard edition and enterprise edition. It was just an unfortunate naming that they already had standard mode.
Yeah, yeah.
But once you get into it, it's really not that hard to keep them straight.
One is mode of operation, the other just the additions. Hopefully.
Yep.
All right.
What advantages does GKE Enterprise bring to AI and ML workloads? So a lot of the issues you run into with AI and ML workloads are understanding what your resource utilization is, because it's very difficult to predict that, hey, this model is going to take X amount of resources, whether it's CPU or GPU or what type of GPU, to train, for example. And training is one thing you can do in GKE Enterprise, as well as doing actual inference. So until you've done your first training session, you don't know what resources to allocate. And the big piece here is the observability. So you might do a big distributed training session where you have multiple nodes or multiple clusters running multiple different trainings. And as long as you can break those out by namespace, then you can have all that detailed observability and understand exactly what resources are used for training your model and inferencing your model, and therefore adjust your allocation of resources appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. We got another question.
Yeah.
Can I use some features in GKE Enterprise without upgrading to GKE Enterprise? So I guess I can answer that, Mac. So yeah, so we do have in the GKE Enterprise edition, we talked about a number of features there, right? But like, what if there's some customers, they are using, let's say, I only want the service mesh by itself. I don't need any other features. You can still actually use that on top of the GKE standard edition. So we do have a standalone GKE service mesh SKU. We have a standalone MCI multi-cluster gateway. We actually GA'd a new feature called the multi-cluster gateway. Gateways actually, that with the gateway APIs, and then you can use the MCI or multi-cluster gateways as a standalone SKU. And then another standalone SKU is the binary authorization that gives you the ability to control what you're going to put in the production mode for the, before you load the image to the production. You can actually verify the image authentication, and then you can verify if the image is legit, and then with the binary authorization feature. So that's a GKE Enterprise security feature, and then you will be able to use that as a standalone SKU as well. So yeah, so then basically we hope that you find all these features. There's a better together story in all of those features. That's why you want to use the GKE Enterprise, right? For example, Mac talked about the service mesh, and then we want you to be able to use the service mesh with the policy controller. We have this service mesh bundle in the policy controller that actually lets you apply the best practice for the service mesh via the policy controller to your service mesh networking. And then so hopefully you will find more than one feature be useful in your deployment. So that's the idea, that with the bundle you don't have to pick which features to buy, which features not to buy, and it just make your life much easier.
And I'll add on to that the pricing, if you end up picking 2 or 3 of the features you do want to run, the pricing will be more advantageous upgrading to Enterprise Edition, because they're all bundled together. Plus, there are features you cannot get standalone, like Teams, enhanced security.
Yeah. Even with the config sync and the policy controller, you don't get, you no longer have the standalone
right
for that. So you have to get them via the Enterprise version.
So pricing is much more advantageous if you buy Enterprise Edition over piecemeal all the different pieces, and you get things you can't get independently. How is GKE Enterprise related to Anthos? I can take that one. So Anthos is in basic, it is GKE running outside of Google Cloud. So Anthos can run in AWS, in Azure, and on-prem in either a bare metal where you're running it directly on compute nodes in a data center at an edge location or on top of VMware. And those are all covered under the Enterprise Edition SKU. So those, if you're going to run a hybrid or multi-cloud Kubernetes clusters, you're going to have to purchase the GKE Enterprise Edition API. You have to enable that.
Yeah. So yeah, I also want to add to that, like with the GKE Enterprise, we are bringing the best of Anthos and GKE all together, right? So not only you get existing GKE Anthos capabilities, as what Mac just mentioned, but you also get some additional new features that Mac also just demoed, things like fleet-based multi-team, multi-cluster management, and then also we have this additional security features in the, for example, if you want to have the scan, we have the advanced security insights to help you. We can help scan your Java package or Python package. The additional security features. So basically, the goal of the GKE Enterprise Edition is really to help you to so if you have clusters on GCP, and then all these features, and then on all these features will benefit you running a clusters, especially if you have, for example, distributed clusters. That's one use cases, right? And then you'll be able to get all the observability in one place, and you'll be able to group them in the fleet, and then be able to scale them much more easily. So GKE Enterprise is definitely a way to help you to scale easily, and to help you also securely run the workload, and then with lower the TCO as well. So, and then what happens to Anthos, you might ask. So Anthos is also now becoming a technology stack powering the GKE Enterprise on the public clouds, and also the GDC distributed cloud. So for example, if you want to get the on-prem offer for the container platform, then you go for the Google distributed cloud, and then actually Anthos was powering the Google distributed cloud actually there, and then that the GDC will become our on-prem brand, just like GCP is for the public clouds. So.
Yeah, actually, Anthos is being kind of put under the umbrella of Google Distributed Cloud. So you've got Google Distributed Cloud Virtual, which is your Anthos bare metal and your Anthos on VMware. And then you've got Google Distributed Cloud Edge, which is a managed rack of hardware that you can deploy on-prem or at your data center. So there are slightly different things all mentioned there, but they're all covered under that Google Distributed Cloud umbrella.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions? Oh, here we go. Is there a difference between GKE Enterprise Service Mesh and the Anthos Service Mesh? No, there isn't. They're basically removing the Anthos because when they came up with Anthos Service Mesh, it really just applied to Anthos. And then very quickly, they realized that GKE would benefit from that technology as well. So now they're really just calling it GKE Service Mesh or just Service Mesh, but they are technically the same stack.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, if not, I just want to actually have a call to action item for everyone that just to try out. If you're interested in the GKE Enterprise Edition, try out the 90-day free trial offer we have, and all you need to do is just go to the Google Cloud Console and go to the Kubernetes Engine dashboard, and then click on that little tag that Mac just showed you, and then there is a learn about GKE Enterprise there if you haven't had that API enabled, and there you can see the 90-day free trial offer, and then click on that. Just one click of a button, you'll be able to enable the GKE Enterprise API and then try it out for 90 days.
All right.
Yep.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, yeah. So, and then, yeah, I think we just want to thank you for joining the webinar. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the 66 Degrees, and feel free to reach out to Google Cloud as well. And we'll be happy to help you.